I call this meeting of the Lafayette Parish School Board to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. Mr. Hidalgo. Ms. Trosclair, do you have any opening comments?
Mr. Centani, to be mindful of time, I just simply want to say that our staff is busy preparing for the start of school. We're reviewing data currently, as well as making sure that our campuses are ready to receive our students. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The first item on our information agenda is transportation updates for the 2019-2020 school year. Ms. Gardner.
Good evening. Just to give a little brief update for the transportation for the school year, we just wanted to let the board and community know that all drivers are in place at this time, that we currently have 17 new drivers currently enrolled in our program that will, hopefully they will finish, and then they have to drive for 10 days once the school day starts, and then they will be employed as a substitute bus drivers. We also, the Transformation e-link will be available to all parents for their bus assignments beginning Thursday, August 1st. The Transportation Help Center will be open to the public beginning Thursday, August 1st, also from 7:30 to 5:30 in the evening at VCC, where we will have 10 clerks there to help assist with bus assignments for parents. We also will be providing new this year a zone support system where in the evening of August 5th from 5 p.m. to 6:30, the Transportation Department will be out at Northside, Karen Crowe High School, and Acadiana High for any parents that have transportation questions. So any elementary or middle schools in those zone areas can go there. Also on Tuesday, August 6th, from 5 to 6:30, we will be at Lafayette High, Como, and Southside to answer questions for the community and parents to help with bus assignments. New this year, we are implementing using the J-Call system through webcams to notify parents when buses will not be running. The Transportation Department will send out a message through the J-Call system, a text message, to notify parents and the school when the bus will not be running. We will also use Facebook with that method that we've been using. The text message will go out to the father, mother, also student cells in high school. The student cell numbers can be entered into webcams. So all the connected numbers, the numbers can actually be updated in the parent portal. So the parent will no longer have to call the school system to update their phone number. They will be able to go into the parent portal and update their phone number at any time to ensure that they're receiving the text messages. We will send out our first text message on Friday, August 2nd, letting parents know that if your child is tagged to a bus, you will receive a message saying that your child has been tagged to a bus in our system. Any questions? Yes, sir.
This might be a question for Mr. Watson. I know for the last 2 years, we have been splitting some transportation routes between Como and Southside because some students were zoned for both schools, right? Can you kind of give us a brief explanation on how much that has, I assume that's going away this year, so how much has it simplified our routing and has it freed up any capacity for bus drivers elsewhere?
Right here. Okay, good evening, President Centani, board members, and superintendent. So yes, we have separated those routes, so now Southside will have their own buses. That is correct.
Do we have any idea how many buses that?
Yes, I have that information.
And does it produce any kind of efficiency where we're able to use buses somewhere else in the parish rather than having that split zone type setup?
Yes, sir. To answer your question about Southside routes, it's 15 routes. So there'll be 15 routes, and it'll enable us to actually look at those new schools that will be able to use that capacity elsewhere.
Thank you very much, Mr. Watson, and thank you for all the work you've done over the last 2 years.
No problem. Thank you so much, sir.
Do you have any questions from board members on this topic? Okay, I'm just going to repeat that again. On August 5th from 5 p.m. to 6:30, parents of students who live in the North Side, Karen Crow, and Acadiana High zones, that means all of the elementary schools and middle schools in those zones. If you have questions about transportation, please go to those high schools. Transportation clerks will be on hand to answer your questions again on August 6th from 5 to 6:30. It's Lafayette High, Como, and Southside. Thank you, Ms. Gardner and Mr. Watson, for making that resource available to our parents. The next item is the list of bids approved to be advertised by the superintendent. Ms. Trosclair, is there anything of note in here to take that you'd like to point out? Thank you. The next item is administrative guidelines for Business Services Division bids and quotations. Mr. Francis.
Good evening, Lee Francis, purchasing agent. This document is being provided to the board. Mr. Guidry wanted to make the change to the professional services piece to include risk management services if the consent agenda item that's later on in the board meeting is approved, then this document will be updated.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Next item, personnel changes for July 17th, 2019. Ms. Thibodeau, do we have any introductions? I know we do, but I'm asking you anyway.
Mr. Centani, board members, and Ms. Trosclair, yes, I'm excited to introduce some new administrators we've hired for the upcoming school year. The first one I'd like to introduce is Dr. Rachel Brown. She will be the principal at Lafayette High School. Dr. Brown has earned a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree and a Bachelor of Science degree from UL Lafayette. She has earned a Master of Education degree in Deaf Education from the University of New Orleans and a PhD in Education and Curriculum and Instruction from Capella University. Dr. Brown taught for 10 years at Lafayette High School. She then went on to serve as an assistant principal at the Louisiana School for the Deaf. She then returned to Lafayette High School as an assistant principal. Also, Dr. Brown teaches American Sign Language to children and adults. Dr. Brown has been an LEF Award nominee for 2 years. She has published professional research on topics such as leadership, bilingual education, and special education. Congratulations, Dr. Brown. You want to come up? Super.
Thank you so much. So y'all has a long legacy of excellence. There have been amazing people in the past, currently amazing people there, and in the future will be amazing people there. I am so honored to now be a part of the Lafayette High legacy as the first INS to lead the Pride. So I thank you for your support as we continue to strive for excellence and as we contribute to the larger Lafayette community and show what it means by example to be a mighty lion. So thank you. It's going to be a great year.
Next, I would like to introduce the principal of J. Wallace James Elementary School, Dr. John Downs. Dr. Downs earned a Doctor of Philosophy in Educational Leadership from LSU, an Educational Specialist in Leadership at Louisiana State University, a Master of Arts in Teaching from the University of Louisiana Lafayette, and a Bachelor's of General Studies degree from the University of Louisiana Lafayette. Dr. Downs has spent 11 years in education. He began his career teaching U.S. government at the National Youth Leadership Council in Washington, D.C., after which he spent time as a special ed teacher at St. Thomas More High School. He then began teaching special education along with ELA, social studies, and computer literacy at Milton Elementary Middle School. Dr. Downs left the classroom to become the itinerant assistant principal at Doosan Elementary and Leo Judice Elementary School. Most recently, Dr. Downs was assistant principal at Green T. Linden Elementary School. Dr. Downs' accomplishments include being awarded the Teacher of the Year at Milton Elementary Middle School and the Sons of the American Revolution State of Louisiana American History Teacher of the Year. He has also published works in the field of educational research and presented at multiple state, local, and national and international conferences in the areas of special educational technology, corporal punishment, school climate, and administration. Congratulations, Dr. Downs.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you to Ms. Trosclair. Appreciate you having the confidence in me in this position. President Centani, nice to see you again. Thank you very much, and all the board members. Just want to thank a few people who have really been supportive of me along the way. Teachers in high school. I went to Lafayette High, Dr. Brown, so I'm happy to hear that we have a lioness in the den. That's fantastic. You know, I had a lot of good teachers at Lafayette High, and also in my teaching career, worked with a lot of good principals in my administrative career. Started off with Rich Lane at St. Thomas More, Miss Trahan at Milton. She brought me in the district. Then Miss ATA. I had Miss Fontenot, who's in the audience today, Miss Connie Fontenot, very supportive, Miss Lemaire, and then Miss Richard last year. I worked with a lot of great administrators, a lot of great teachers. I'm going to take those experiences and bring them to J. Wallace James. I'd also like to thank the J. Wallace James family. I've gotten a lot of wonderful support, just a wonderful welcome from J. Wallace James, and I'm very pleased to be there and very humbled. Also want to thank my wife, Sarah, and Harper and Iris, who are in the audience. So thank you all. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Next, I would like to introduce the principal at L.J. Alamo Arts Magnet Academy, Eric Luquette. Mr. Luquette earned a Bachelor of Arts degree and a Master of Education degree from the University of Louisiana Lafayette. Mr. Luquette began his career as an itinerant ESL teacher in Acadia Parish. He then moved to Lafayette Parish and served as an ESL math teacher, and his last position has been serving as an assistant principal at L.J. Alamo Fines Arts Magnet Academy for the last 6 years. Congratulations, Mr. Luquette.
I would like to say thank you to the board members and Ms. Trosclair for this opportunity to return to my former middle school and make a difference over there, as it has made a difference in my life. I wouldn't be here today without the support of my wife and son, who are in the crowd today, so thank y'all very much. I would also like to thank Bobby Batto and Nancy Ducray for bringing me into the parish, and especially Ms. Aloisio and Ms. Gardner, who have been phenomenal to me since giving me the opportunity to be at Alamo and for helping me grow as an administrator. I also like to thank Ms. Champagne for being there for me through this whole entire process, and finally for the faculty of LA Alamo, who have done nothing but supported me. So thank y'all all for this opportunity.
Next, I would like to introduce the principal of Paul Breaux Middle School, Catherine Rayburn. Ms. Rayburn earned a Bachelor of Arts and a Master of Education degree from the University of Louisiana Lafayette. Ms. Rayburn was an elementary teacher in Acadia Parish and Lafayette Parish. She served as an assistant principal at J. Wallace James Elementary School, Catherine Drexel Elementary School, and principal of Duson Elementary School. Congratulations, Ms. Rayburn.
Superintendent Trosclair, thank you for this appointment as principal. Board President Centani and all board members, I want you to know I'm over the moon excited to be at Paul Breaux Middle School. It's a great team. I'm confident that our team will provide high quality education for all students. Thank you to Director Aloisio and CAO Gardner for the valuable support you continue to provide me, our team, and ultimately our students. I'm committed to Paul Breaux Middle School, and I'm committed to a continuous growth mindset. Our team is committed to preparing students to be successful in middle school and be prepared for high school. I want to finish with thanking my husband for being here. And could you get it on the record that he said that he's going to cook dinner every night now that I'm a principal again? Thank you.
Next, I would like to introduce the Director of Athletics, Physical Education, and Health, Nicholas Jeffers. Mr. Jeffers earned a Bachelor of Science degree from UL. and a Master of Education degree from McNeese State University. Mr. Jeffers began his career at Como High School as the girls' basketball coach and assisted coaching in a variety of sports at Como, including football, softball, baseball, and track. He then accepted a position at UL Lafayette as the assistant women's basketball coach and served in that position for 2 seasons. In 2012, he accepted the position as head girls basketball coach at Acadiana High School and has been there for the last 7 years. At Acadiana High School, he has also served as the head boys basketball coach for 4 years and athletic director for 2 years. Congratulations, Mr. Jeffers.
Superintendent Trosclair, Mr. President, board members, thank you, first and foremost. After serving Lafayette Parish School System since 2002, I'm excited to continue my service to the parish in my new role as Director of Athletics, Health, and Physical Education. I'm extremely honored and humbled, and I look forward to working with the board, the administrators, teachers, coaches, and the student athletes of LPSS. And thanks again for this great opportunity, and also thanks to my family who is here with me, Megan and my daughter, Marley. So again, thank you. Looking forward to it. Nice tie.
I made that, Mr. Jeffers, I made that very comment to Mr. Latchley when you were walking up. That's a very nice tie you have.
Next, I'd like to introduce Holly Ortego is the Director of Special Education. Ms. Ortego earned a Bachelor of Arts degree from McNeese State University and a Master of Education degree from the University of St. Thomas in Houston, Texas. She has also completed the coursework to certify as a behavior analyst. Ms. Ortego was a special education teacher at Opelousas Junior High School for 1 year. She then moved to Houston, Texas, and was employed with the Houston ISD School District. While working for the Houston ISD School District, she served in the capacity of special education teacher at Burbank Elementary School for 5 years. District program supervisor for 3 years. She then was promoted to special education director and served in this capacity for 9 years. And while she was special education director, she served as principal of a program that provided occupational opportunity for adult students with disabilities. For the last 4 years, Ms. Ortego has been serving as special education program supervisor for the Lafayette Parish School System. Ms. Ortego was awarded Special Education Teacher of the Year and Administrator of the Year while employed with the Houston Independent School District. Congratulations, Ms. Ortego.
Good evening, Board President, Ms. Trosclair, and all the members here. I cannot tell you how excited I am. My heart and passion is 100% with kids, but it's especially with kids with disabilities. I think we have so much opportunity, so much potential in this district, the hearts of the teachers, the staff, the stakeholders, and I look forward and I'm thankful and grateful for the opportunity ahead of me. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Congratulations. At this moment, I am going to pause the meeting for 1 minute, and if anybody feels that they would be best served by getting up and going home, you may certainly do so. If you would like to stay and visit with us for the remainder of the evening, we more than welcome you to do so. No one will look at you funny if you get up and leave. It's okay. Thank you to all the friends and family who came tonight. Okay, what I'll do now is I will read through our consent agenda. Board members, if there's an item you would like to pull for further discussion, please do so at the appropriate time. The first item is number 1, discussion and or action concerning the 2019-2020 pupil progression plan. Number 2, discussion and/or action concerning ratification of quotes for Karen Crowe Middle School paving repairs. I got a little bit ahead of myself. I'm sorry, Dr. Chasson. There was one more information item. Distribution of back-to-school supplies for transformation zone schools. Please.
All right. So really quickly, I wanted to publicly announce again, through our partnership with the Love Our Schools initiative, students that attend any of the following schools that I mentioned will receive a backpack filled with school supplies for the 2019-2020 school year. And those schools are Acadian Middle, Alice Boucher, Karen Crowe Heights, Karen Crowe High School, Dr. Raphael A. Barranco Elementary, J.W. Falk, Lafayette Middle, La Rosen Prep, and Northside High School. So again, any kid that attends those select schools doesn't have to come with a book sack. A book sack will be provided to them. You don't have to purchase school supplies. Your school supplies will be provided to you. And I can't reiterate that and repeat that enough. There's been a few parents asking me, hey, Timmy, I'm really looking for the list. And these are people that are in my own family. Hey, listen, the kids attend Alice Boucher, right? Yeah, all 4 of them? Yeah, right. You don't have to buy school supplies this year. So hopefully some of the board members will as well, and I'm sure many of them have already been doing it as I've been seeing it, posted on their Facebook. We've been posting it, but just making sure folks are aware you don't have to buy school supplies for these select schools.
Thank you, Dr. Chasson. I would like to add that through the generosity of the Love Our Schools Foundation and Love Acadiana, we were supposed to have a Love Our Schools Volunteer Day this past Saturday. Unfortunately, got postponed due to Tropical Storm Hurricane Barry. The good news is there's still time for all of you to volunteer to show up at one of these 8 schools on August 10th. If you had previously volunteered to show up at one of these schools, you were automatically moved to that same school on August 10th. If you had not signed up to volunteer, you still have time to go to the loveourschoolsfoundation.org and fill out the form that says you will show up on August 10th and weed eat, pressure wash, pull weeds, put whiteboards up, things of that nature. So I look forward to seeing everybody, and we really do appreciate at all of those schools everybody in the community's help. Now, back to the consent agenda. Number 1 has already been pulled. Number 2 is the discussion and/or action concerning ratification of quotes at Karen Crowe Middle School paving repairs. Number 3, ratification of quotes for Karen Crowe Middle School gym bleachers replacement. Number 4, award of bids for Como High School boys gym bleachers replacement. Number 5, ratification of bids for Barranco Elementary furniture package 2. Number 6, ratification of bids for BO Elementary Furniture Package 2. Number 7, approval of construction manager at risk for LJ Alamo Middle School Classroom Wing Addition.
Please pull that.
Number 8, grant fund summary for June 2019. Number 9, budget to actual reports for June 2019. Number 10, authority to negotiate and execute a purchase agreement for the former Camping World site at 3030 Northeast Evangeline Thruway for a bus and maintenance facility. Number 11, bid award, band uniforms, bid number 06-20. Number 12, bid award, pea gravel, bid number 08-20. Number 13, bid award, ready mix concrete, bid number 09-20. Number 14, bid award, number 610 limestone, bid number 10-20. Number 15, bid award, red mulch, bid number 11-20. Number 16, bid award, asphalt cold mix, bid number 13-20. Number 17, bid award, mesh backpacks, homeless department, bid number 28-20. Number 18, bid rejection, calculators, bid number 01-20. Number 19, bid award, sports medical supplies, bid number 29-20. Number 20, bid award, kitchen equipment, bid number 19-20. Number 21, proposal recommendation, voice over internet protocol phone service. Number 22, Resolution 07-19-1961, Service Machine and Supply Incorporated Industrial Tax Exemption Application. Number 23, Sales Tax Collection Reports for May 2019 and June 2019. Number 24, the Educational Classroom Interpreter Job Description. Number 25, Licensed Practical Nurse Job Description. Number 26, Deaf Education Lead Interpreter Job Description. Number 27, Budget Revision to pay for Mentor Teacher Training. Number 28, Additional Compensation for School Bus Owner Operators. Pull that. Number 29, RFPs for Health and Property and Casualty Insurance.
Pull that, please.
Number 30, Administration of Voluntary Benefits. Number 31, 2019-2020 Reorganization Phase 2. Number 32, the minutes of June 4th, 5th, and July 8th, 2019.
Mr. President, I missed 322. I wanted to pull that. I'm sorry.
Certainly. 22. All right, pulled was the Pupil Progression Plan, the Alamo Wing Edition, the ITEP application, the RFP for Health and Property and Casualty, the RFP for Voluntary Benefits, and the bus driver compensation. Thank you very much.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Angel that we approve all items not pulled, seconded by Mr. Latchley. We're a little rusty after a month and a half off, I'm sure. Is there any public comment on any of the items not pulled? So if you are here to speak and give public comment on any of the items that were not listed by me just now, so any of the items that are not the Alamo Wing Edition, the RFP for Health and Voluntary or Health and Property and Casualty Insurance, Voluntary Benefits, Contract Bus Driver Compensation, and the ITEP application, now is the time to speak up. And the Pupil Progression Plan as well. Those will be handled separately. Hearing none, do we have any board member comment? Madam Secretary, I'll call for the vote.
Eight for, none against.
Motion carries. The first item will be discussion and/or action concerning the 2019-2020 Pupil Progression Plan. Dr. Chasson?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve the proposed 2019-2020 Pupil Progression Plan as attached in the public comment section of this agenda item. Is that sufficient, Dr. Chasson?
Yes, sir.
Second by Mr. Angel. Do we have any public comment on this item?
Julia Reed, president of LPAE. Actually, I have a question. Does this include the changes asked for by the principal, which you're voting to approve?
This particular motion does not.
Thank you.
Make sure I'm correct on that. Thank you very much.
I'm gonna get it changed. I'm gonna get it changed. I'm gonna get it changed. I mean, y'all can certainly talk. Y'all can certainly talk. Yeah.
Yes, the board members will talk after the public is done commenting.
But I mean, that's changing my motion.
Okay, all right, so thank you for the clarification, because I misunderstood the initial proposal. So thank you for Julia Williams spearheading this for the high school principals. She's on a trip with Gear Up, so she was unable to attend and be the speaker for the high school principals. So Mr. Devitaz and I decided to come and represent the high school principals. We wrote a letter to Ms. Trosclair. We all signed it. Every single high school principal in the district agrees to this proposal. Our concern is the R, and it's either replace or average. And I won't go into too many detail unless you guys have questions. I'm assuming that you've read the letter that's attached there in the board docs. But we just feel like in order to have equity across the board for all of the high schools, if a kid transfers in an effort to provide equality when it comes to kids applying for scholarships or GPA, that it's even across the board. So if one school averages and another replaces, then it could definitely be a huge inequality. We all met together as a group and we unanimously signed the letter, and we all agree on the choosing one. We prefer the replace and not the average. All of the high school principals that signed it agreed to replace and not average, but we do not want the option to have one or the other.
Mr. Devitaz, you have something to say? Okay, I do have a question. Doesn't the current language, as I read it, says the SBLC will review the situation to determine whether the higher grade replaces the lower grade or if the higher and lower grades are averaged to produce a final grade. Isn't that you? Like the head of the SBLC? That's the principal, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
So if we took that out, the or out, okay, it would automatically replace.
So your request is to take out everything or and after?
Replace, yes.
Yes. Or and after. That's
No, because it
correct.
says or if the higher and lower grades are averaged to produce a final grade.
And again, our preference as principals is to have it replace the grade so it can actually determine the mastery of standards that are being taught.
Was this brought to the Pupil Progression Planning Committee during the process that the document was crafted?
It was not.
It was not? Why not?
Because it was after the plan was...
It was after it was produced that we recognized the little R.
Okay.
And when we come through it, that we realized that, and the red flag went up for all.
Is this a change from last year's document? This
Last year-
language that you're asking us to amend, is that in fact, I have no idea, is that different from last year's document, or is this something that is carrying over from last year's document?
So if you recall the re-engage, reassess last year, at the beginning of the year, it had a lot of changes. We started the year, and then you guys came back and made some more changes. And so then at that point in time,
Change some shalls to may, I
yes,
believe.
Yes. So then I think it was pretty much up to the school, and each department or however the school site administrator chose to allow the re-engage, reassess process to occur. So we just kind of went on the fly with it last year. So it was probably or up to the site-based administrator.
Mr. Centani, I'm sorry, Ms.
We would like
Cassidy.
uniformity.
Last year, and Ms. Aloise Hill will correct me if I'm wrong, but last year it was either or, as written presently.
And what did the high schools do last year?
Different high schools do different things.
I assume different high schools did the best thing for the students at their school, though, right?
There were a lot of changes at the beginning of the year. If you recall, there were some things that were adopted in place. Remember the no homework and all of that kind of jazz. And then there was, you could, you replaced the grade, you went and took it and you replaced it. And then it was left up to each school to how they wanted to re-engage, reassess. So there was a lot of gray area last year, too much gray area. Like we as site-based administrators struggled through the gray area as the school year went on.
And we wanted clarity to make sure that we did have that gray area, and we also wanted it to be equitable at all schools.
And moving toward mastery of content, which is where we're moving as a district, which is what the replace year is geared toward.
Is there any other public comment? Is there any board member comment? Questions? Dr. Chasson?
So I was trying to use Control Find to find the individual language in the actual pupil progression plan, because I completely agree with them. But I couldn't find it, so I naturally assumed that the requested change was then included for what the principals wanted. So could anybody point out to me where in the actual pupil progression plan, or what page, because there's 75 pages, where the actual language is? Because I would like to take out the R. Mhm.
And it's on page 59, and it should be in red because of there were some things there that did change, but on page 59, grades 9 through 12, the language is there as well.
No, ma'am. Well, because of the mastery. Miss Cassidy, can I bother you for a second, please? So the because mastery of content standards, I was looking for those keywords in here, and I still couldn't find it between page 6 and 7. I'm still having an issue.
Are you asking where we're asking to
Because of it.
take off R?
Oh no, just from, so this is a snippet of page 6 and 7, right? So where is because of mastery of content standards? 'Cause I couldn't find it. I was looking 2 nights ago and last night. Okay, well, where? Let's see. All right, got it. All right, here we go. So it indeed is not changed. So let me respectfully pull my motion back, or rescind my motion. And I'd like to, or I can just simply respectfully make the request for grades. Well, I'd like to make it, well, go ahead, Mr. President, you got it.
There is now no motion on the floor.
All right, appreciate you, sir.
Absolutely.
All right, so I'd like to make a motion to approve the pupil progression plan with the following changes. Grades 2 through 8, page 59, for re-engagement / reassessment. I'd like the sentence to read, the higher grade will replace the lower grade, period, and eliminate the, or the teacher can average the original grade and reassessment grade to replace the lower grade. And then as well for grades 9 through 12, the sentence, our requested motion will be the higher grade will replace the lower grade, period, and again eliminate the, or the teacher can average the original grade and reassessment grade to replace the lower grade. And then I have a comment after that.
So motion on the floor from Dr. Chasson, seconded by Ms. Angel, to remove, if I read it correctly, or if the higher and lower grades are averaged to produce a final grade, from pages 58 and 59 in grades 9 through 12. Do you have any public comment on that motion? Ms. Reed?
Yes, the association has taken a position against this, against what the principals want, for many reasons. The primary one being that this is being done after the fact of the pupil progression committee meetings. And so now teachers do not really, I mean, yes, they do have a say if they came to a board meeting, but it's not the same thing as sitting down in the committee and discussing it. So we think that it is not appropriate for it to be changed without maybe consulting the teachers. There's no letter from the teachers attached to this agenda item. We oppose taking away teachers' autonomy within their classrooms. If it is a problem, you know, if a teacher is not making the best decisions, that should be a discussion between them and their administrator. Equity is not everybody getting the same thing. Equity is everybody gets what they need, and what different people need is different. This morning, the parish had a speaker come and talk to us at Barenco, and that is one thing that he stressed very much, is that different students have different needs. So we oppose taking autonomy away from teachers, and we also oppose having things changed after teachers vote on them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Is there any other public comment on this motion? Is there any board member comment on this motion?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Knezik.
My only comment is that this is the forum for approval of the pupil progression plan and changes to the pupil progression plan. The pupil progression plan is not final when it leaves the teachers committee nor the principals committee. This is the forum. We've given public notice. The principal's letter was attached to the public notice. So for that reason, I support the changes that are recommended.
Dr. Chessel?
I just wanted to give my reasoning for the requested changes. But before I do that, I have to add a respectful amendment to my motion. There's another section in there that has the SBLC committee will review the situation to determine whether a higher grade replaces a lower grade, or if the higher and lower grades are averaged to produce a final grade. If we indeed do go with this proposed motion, then that will eliminate the need for that SBLC review. So I'd also like to strike that entire sentence out as well.
Would you please give page number and paragraph?
That would be page, I'm still on 59 in the red, in the red changed.
So are we talking about the final two sentences or just the second, the third to last sentence?
It's actually, it's about 3 or 4 sentences in the grades 9 through 12 from the bottom, right after the word edgenuity.
So the sentence that starts the SBLC, so it's going to be 1 to the final 3 sentences of that paragraph, of the same paragraph that we're already modifying, yes?
It would simply need to be the striking of that individual sentence, because if the re-engagement and reassessment process is not successful and the student still earns an F, the SBLC committee still has the power and opportunity to review the case to establish a plan to offer the student another chance at grade recovery.
So is your amendment to strike the third to final sentence in that paragraph, grades 9 to 12, that reads, the SBLC will review the situation to determine whether the higher grade replaces the lower grade, or if the higher and lower grades are averaged to produce a final grade?
Yes, sir.
Only that sentence?
Only that sentence.
Let's make sure we're clear for that for the record.
Yes, sir.
Got it? And just that one sentence right there. Third to last sentence, page 50. Mr. Angel, does your second still stand? Mr. Angel still seconds Dr. Chasson's motion. Do we have any public comment on the amended motion? Do we have any board member comment?
Yes, sir.
Dr. Chasson.
All right. So now, my reasoning for requesting this, I can understand the term equity. I can understand the term need, but a kid takes one assessment, and in that one assessment, that individual kid scores a 0, let's say. And on the next assessment, the kid has went back, relearned, rehashed, remembered, gosh, so many reads, retained, recalled information that they couldn't before. So that was twice the kid has studied for a particular exam, more of an opportunity to learn the requested material than that kid has now retained and probably gained knowledge they didn't have before. At that point, that kid scores 100. I want that kid to get the 100 and earn the 100 as opposed to averaging that and that kid gets a 50. And that's what bothers me about the process. I know the speaker today spoke about equity and need, but if a kid, there's no situation where a kid can take 2 assessments and we average it and the kid's going to get a higher grade. I want the kid to get the grade that they have now earned, and this is allowing that particular kid an opportunity. If you need to retake an exam, then at that point, that kid has now went and re-engaged and relearned, and whatever that kid has earned at that point, be it a higher grade, I want that kid to have that earned grade because that kid is probably struggling in the first place. So that's my only requested comment for this situation.
Thank you, Dr. Chasson. Do we have any other board member comment? I have a request, Dr. Chasson, if you might include something in your motion. I know it's a further amendment to it. Would you please or consider adding, changing number 4 on page 57 from homework shall not be graded to homework shall count for 5% of the grade? Page 57, under grades 6 through 12, number 4. Number 4, page 57. Well, your motion currently reads approve as attached, so once we vote on yours, the PPP will be approved. If you would like to remove your part of approved as attached, that's fine. Okay, so the motion now from Dr. Chasson now reads that that the board modify the pupil progression plan as attached with his changes, as opposed to the board approve the pupil progression plan as attached. Does your second still stand? Mr. Angel has seconded a 5th motion on this item. Is there any public comment on the new motion? Every time we make a motion, you get to say something. Isn't it great?
Okay, so any teacher, I don't want to say any teacher because there are always exceptions. Most teachers, if that child makes a 0 and then 100, would use their discretion to give that child the 100. But we all know that there are those children who do not make the right choices. And, I just think that if you leave the discretion, it can still be a conversation between a principal and a teacher if a teacher is not making the right choices for a student. You would still get the same outcome, but you would still give that teacher discretion because most teachers do want what's best for their children. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Do we have any other public comment? Do we have any board member comment? Madam Secretary, I'll call for the vote.
Dr. Chasson? Are they? Dr. For clarification purposes, your motion changed that.
To not close the conversation and approve the entire.
Yeah.
Okay.
The language you changed was for all grades, not
All
just high
grades.
school? Was that your intention?
All grades.
Okay. 8 for, none against.
Motion passes. Mr. Latchley?
All right, Mrs. Centenni, I'll read this one for you. Modify the pupil progression plan on page 57. Grading practices guidelines, grades 6 to 12. Number 4 to read. Homework will be weighted at 5% of the formative category.
Thank you, Mr. Latchley. There's a motion on the floor to
I'll second.
seconded by Ms. Morrison. Modify the pupil progression plan, page 57, grading practices and guidelines, grades 6 through 12, number 4 to read. Homework will be weighted at 5% of the formative category. Is there any public comment on this motion? Any board member comment? Mr. Broussard?
Will that 5% be an additional 5% since homework is not mandatory, or it's not really? Would it be an additional 5%? It won't hurt them if you do not do it.
I believe it will now be 60, 35, and 5. So our summative is 60%, our formative is 35, would be 35%, and homework would be 5% of the grade, as opposed to now where your formative assessments are 40%. Dr. Chessel?
Before we went to 0, what was it previously?
It was 10%.
10%. Okay. So what's the reasoning for 5%? Because we went from 10%, then we went to 0, and there was a lot of discussion at the time as far as why 0, and because there was debate back and forth, and we decided 0. So now we're going to 5. What's the reason for 5? For the maker of the motion?
Well, the reason I requested this motion be made was admittedly anecdotally, but I've heard that there is a lack of motivation to do homework because it doesn't count for anything. Now, I was of the mind that if we were going to be putting 100% of your grade, so we had initially gone to 90% summative and 10% formative. If 90% of your grade was going to be on your summative assessments, then it should be a fairly easy task to convince students to do their homework if it means you're not going to do well on the assessments that make up 90% of your grade. Okay. That's all great in theory, but my understanding is that it has, especially since we went back to 60% summative and 40% formative, that teachers are having a difficult time getting students motivated to do the homework that lead to success on their summative assessments. And I had several teachers request that they be given 5% of the grade, of the formative grade. I keep making sure I have to say the right word. 5% of the formative grade to be homework.
I got you. I can honest to God understand where the motivation with the 5% would then help increase motivation, but I haven't heard from anyone. So when it comes to the individual pupil progression plan and the committee meeting, I can understand. It wasn't like I came up with the idea to change averaging versus higher or lower. I haven't heard from anyone, but when I hear from all 6 principals, 6? There's 6 principals? 7. All 7 principals, and they all signed like this is what we want. I'm okay with going with it. I haven't heard from anyone. So can anyone speak or attest to anyone on the individual committee as to what the discussions were when it came down to this homework situation again? Somebody's got to be in here.
I'll answer the question. I'll give you the answer that I've heard for that particular question was they were told not to discuss it.
Somebody could have said that when I asked the first time. That's right. That's right. That's right. That's what I'm asking. That's what I'm asking.
Issue right here.
Yeah.
Well, how can something be off the table in a committee meeting?
We were told that homework and the cheating policy were off the table at the very first PPP meeting.
When was the very first? In March.
Mr. President, you asked for public comment and no one commented, and now we're having public comment.
Well, I think Dr. Chesson asked a question.
We're asking for
ask the
people
question to
from the
them.
committee.
Oh, okay, so-
Yeah, we're asking people from the committee.
Okay.
Yes.
Point taken, Ms. Thornshell. Dr. Chasson, please direct your comments to me.
Okay. Mr. President. Do I want to even go down the rabbit hole of who told you guys not to discuss? Never mind. I actually know who told you guys.
It's actually neither here nor there.
Yeah, I actually told you guys who. I know who told you
Do
not
you have
to
any
discuss it.
further questions about the motion?
I would like to hear from the actual committee if they had a chance to discuss it, because they may want to go to 10%. I mean, we're not the professionals here. They are. So I would like to hear from the actual committee. So as opposed to voting for the recommended change from a few people, I'd like them to actually meet and have the ability to discuss it and then come back with said recommendation, and we can approve it for August. That would be my recommendation. As opposed to hearing from a few people that I personally have not heard from.
Dr. Chasson, the PPP was due to the state July 1st. We actually were granted an extension. We have to have it finalized and turned in by Friday. We're not able to do any revisions or submit any amendments beyond that point.
Dr. Chasson, I'm sympathetic to what you're saying. I would have much preferred if both of these changes had gone back to the committee. Unfortunately, there seems to be no time to do so. Furthermore, I think if you wanted the committee to discuss it, I think the committee did want to discuss it.
Right.
And we're not afforded that opportunity. So to answer your question, do we have any other board member comment on this motion? Mr. Broussard.
The problem I've got with it is that we decided that homework was not anything to their advantage. We're at 60-40. Now we're at 60-35 and 5. And if you don't do your homework, you're not going to get that extra 5. You're punishing those who you said it was okay not to do it. So if it's not an added to it, it's not an addition to your 60-40, then it's pretty much mandatory to do the homework to get the 5% to bring it to 100. I'm like Mr. Chasson. I would love to see the committee come back with some recommendation for us to make that law or make it a rule that either you can do it or either you're not going to do your homework and don't get penalized, or do it and get credit for it.
Thank you, Mr. Broussard. Do we have any other comment? Last time, Dr. Chasson.
So, as opposed to hearing from a few people, because I haven't heard from anyone, and I grant that I understand we don't have any time, but if we don't have any time, I don't know who anyone's heard from, and I haven't heard from anyone. So I would say leave it the same, as opposed to letting it be a sweeping wave of momentum that is going to make a hasty decision on behalf of information that I don't have in front of me. And for those folks that have issues with the fact that I'm trying to do the correct thing, keep your ugly looks and your groans and moans to yourself, unless you're willing to press your microphone and groan into the mic. Because I'm just trying to do the right thing for the kids. The committee didn't have a chance to review it. They were told it's off the table. So we're going to make the decision for them without hearing from them. I mean, I'm okay whichever way it goes, because 5% is not that big a deal, but for me to voice my concerns and then have
Thank you, Dr. Chasson. Any other comment? Mr. Hidalgo.
I too did not receive any calls about this, and I'm not going to try to debate whether or not they were told it's off the table. Probably happened, but if it was that important of an issue, I sure would have liked to have received a phone call when they were told it was off the table, so that this board could put it back on the table. So I agree. I'm not going to support this motion.
Any other comment from board members? Madam Secretary, I'll call for the vote.
5 for, 3 against.
Motion carries. Mr. Latchley?
Is it written on the agenda item, or do we just make the motion to approve the pupil make a motion that we approve as modified the pupil progression plan?
Motion by Mr. Latchley, seconded by Mr. Angel, that the board approve the modified 2019-2020 pupil progression plan.
Mr. Santani, I want clarification on the homework that just passed page,
Only grades 6 through 12.
only 6 through 12.
That's the
Okay,
motion.
thank you.
Motion on the floor with a second is that the board approve the modified 2019-2020 pupil progression plan. Do we have any public comment? Do we have any board member comment?
Who was the second?
Mr. Angel? Madam Secretary, I'll call for the vote.
Eight for, none against.
Motion carries. The next item is number 7, the approval of the construction manager at risk for LJ Alamo Middle School Classroom Wing Addition. Mr. Knezik?
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that the board accept the recommendation of the evaluation committee and the superintendent and approve the Lemoyne Company as a construction manager at risk for pre-construction services for the LJ Alamo Middle School Classroom Wing Addition project.
A second.
A motion by Mr. Knezik, seconded by Ms. Morrison, that the board accept the recommendation of the evaluation committee and the superintendent and approve the Lemoyne Company as the construction manager at risk for pre-construction services for the LJ Alamo Middle School Classroom Wing Addition project. Are there any public comments on this motion? Is there any board member comment? Mr. Knezik, did you have a comment, or we just? All right. Hearing none, Madam Secretary, I'll call for the vote. Hmm.
Seven for, none against.
Motion carries. The next item is number 22, Resolution 07-19-1961, Service Machine and Supply Incorporated Industrial Tax Exemption Application. Mr. Knezik?
Mr. President, I'd like to find out if there is anyone in the audience that is here to speak on behalf of Service Machine and Supply.
May I get a motion before we make that request?
Well, my motion may be to defer, but
Thank you. We have a motion by Mr. Angel, seconded by Ms. Morrison, that the board approve Resolution 07-19-1961 for Service Machine and Supply Incorporated its participation in the Industrial Tax Exemption Program as attached in the public content section of this agenda item. That's what you meant, right, Mr. Angel? Thank you. Do we have any public comment on this motion? Do we have any board member comment? Mr. Knezik?
This application is asking the board to basically defer or give up about $19,000 worth of taxes. If we review the application, it seems like it makes financial sense, but I think it's in our best interest not to approve something like this unless someone is here to speak on behalf of it. I think someone should have to give us a case and say, we want this money from you, and in return we're going to give this to you, instead of it being a blank, rubber stamp. So I would offer a substitute motion to defer this until there's someone here that can speak on behalf of the item.
Second.
There's a substitute motion from Mr. Kinesick that we defer this item until such time as a representative of Service Machine Incorporated is here to speak. Seconded by Mr. Hidalgo. Do we have any public comment on this item? Mr. Francis?
Okay. Lee Francis, purchasing agent. Mr. Guidry asked me to notify you that if you defer this item, it still ends up being automatically approved. And the entity that approves it is the Louisiana Department of Economic Development.
Correct me if I'm wrong, we have 30 days from the receipt of application before it is automatically approved. Is that correct? Do we know when we received the application?
You are correct, yes.
When did we receive the application?
I do not know the date. I don't know the date.
Anyone? Anyone at all?
Mr. President, I'd like to pull my motion to defer.
You seem to be in a bit of a pickle now, don't you? The motion on the floor is to approve the resolution as, I can't remember now, Resolution 07-19-1961.
Well,
I will give you a minute if you would like to think over your options.
I would like to ask if there's anyone within accounting or somebody, is there anybody in this building that can speak on behalf of this?
Mr. Angel.
Does that include board members, or is it still?
No, certainly while people think about how they want to react to all this, you're welcome to have the floor.
I appreciate that very much, Mr. President. As a former member of LEADER and on various economic development boards in Lafayette Parish and in Karen Crow, and I know the sentiment that, well, you know, we giving these big businesses a tax break, but by and large, and I'm not familiar with the business, I'm not going to lie to you, but by and large, these kinds of tax abatements generally end up pumping more tax money into Lafayette Parish than the exemptions that they're asking for. On a grand scale, on a large scale, an example would be these LNG plants that were developed in the Baton Rouge, Cameron area along the Gulf Coast. There's millions of dollars being pumped into our economy and thousands of jobs that are being provided, not solely, but one of the reasons is that tax abatements were awarded by the state, and of course in this case Cameron Parish and other parishes that are involved. So I think it's a good thing. I know it's $19,000, but I think it'll put people to work that'll end up paying more than the $19,000 that we will not receive in the school board. I think we'll end up receiving more. Thank you, Mr. President.
Certainly. Mr. Kinesick?
Since no one's here to speak on behalf of it, I will speak. This company is asking they plan to make an investment of $179,933, and they're asking for an estimated 10-year property tax exemption of $18,495.68, and an additional 10-year property tax exemption of $500. That's where we get the $19,000. And with that, they anticipate employing an additional 2 personnel over that period of time. So it appears, like I said previously, that financially it makes sense. I just think that for future ITEP applications, it might be a good idea for someone to speak on behalf of those if they're asking the board to give up $19,000 in taxes. So.
Thank you, Mr. Kinesick. Mr. Letchley?
I can't speak on their behalf, but this business is located in District 5, and before the economy took a downturn, the growth and the people they were hiring in our area and the buildings they were building and the things they were doing was very good, you know, back before 3 or 4 years ago. So they are a very successful company. They are trying to grow. They are trying to do good things, and I'm going to go ahead and support this.
Thank you, Mr. Latchley. Any other board members? Mr. Hidalgo?
Yep, Mr. Knezik, if I may direct my question to Mr. Knezik, because he is the one that spoke on behalf of it, because no one's here to speak. I know that in my day job, we give these types of tax abatements and certainly infrastructure improvements from the taxpayer to companies who come in and, and bring jobs and bring productivity to the community. But they're all typically tied to some kind of guarantee. So, for example, if a company's coming in and says they're going to hire 50 people and they're going to bring X amount of, tax revenue to the city, and they don't do it in a certain period of time, then they have to reimburse that abatement or that infrastructure advance given. Is there anything in here? Can anything be put in here to along those lines? I mean, we know that we want to encourage growth because then that brings, as Mr. Angel said, additional growth. But do you believe that's something that could be added?
I do not believe that's something that we can add because there's a resolution that we're basically approving something that Exhibit A, an agreement between Louisiana Department of Economic Development and the company. You would have to read through the details of this agreement to see if there's any sort of clawback provision. But if the state didn't include some sort of clawback provision, then there's nothing that we can do to add to that at this point. But I'm going to vote in favor of it. I know I cast a little doubt, but the doubt was mainly because there was no one here to speak on behalf of it.
Yeah, I agree with you. To
Mr.
close,
Angel?
well, I had asked the question. I wasn't closed out.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought
That's okay, but I'm closing.
I assumed he was his turn to talk.
Well, and I want to agree. I'm going to support it, but I tell you, it's a little difficult for a body that operates off of tax dollars to abate tax dollars when, I mean, geez,
Mr.
no one's here to
Francis,
speak
was
on
anyone
behalf.
invited from Service Machine and Supply to be here tonight?
I am not privy of that information. I do not know.
Okay. Mr. Angel?
I want to point out that when the Louisiana Department of Economic Development gets involved in this, there are commitments that have to be made in order to get the rebate. A prime example is this helicopter company, and I don't know the name of it, but they were going to come to Lafayette by the airport, and they were going to build these helicopters, and they didn't build them. And because they went through the Louisiana Department of Economic Development, they did not get the tax abatement that was promised to them because they didn't fulfill their part of the bargain. So I understand where you're coming from, and we would do it all the time at LEDA. But when the Louisiana Department of Economic Development gets involved in this, they generally have these rules that says, okay, you're going to promise 2 jobs or whatever it is that Mr. Knezik read or whatever. If they don't do it, they have to give back the rebate.
Madam Secretary, I'll call for the vote.
Eight, 4, none against.
Very convincing, Mr. Angel. Next item, number 28, action concerning additional compensation for school bus owner-operators. Forgive me, I forgot who pulled that item. Mr. Angel.
I move for adoption.
Mr. Angel moves that the board approve additional compensation to be paid to school bus owner-operators for the 2019-2020 school year in the amount of $5,000 total for those entering agreements for a term of 1 year effective July 2019 and up to $4,587 prorated for those entering agreements for a term of less than 1 year after the start of the school year, provided the school bus owner-operator executes a school bus use agreement to be prepared by the board's legal counsel. Seconded by Mr. Latchley. Do we have any public comment on this item? Do we have any board member comment? Mr. Knezik?
My question is, so it appears that this is a compensation to defer some of the costs of the $1 million insurance policy and listing us as additional insured. And my question is, for staff, how did they come up with the $5,000?
This is a really bad meeting for Mr. Guidry to be absent from, as well as Mr. Dugan. I don't know who's minding the cash register these days, but
From what I understand, and I'm going to ask Ms. Boudreaux. Mona?
When we started the program back in 2016-17, we were paying them $3,000, and that was an average of what we estimate or could figure out what the increase would be to go from what they were carrying to the $1 million. And then last year, that they asked that we increase it by $2,000, and so we agreed to do that. It seemed that premiums were going up, the whole market was getting very hard, and the insurers scarce for buses.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bernard. Is that,
I had a follow-up question.
I think there's going to be another question for you in a second if you'll stay close, Mr. Knesset.
Are we collecting quotes or invoices from the drivers annually just so that we can make sure that we're paying them enough every year, or not too much, not too much, not too little?
Yes, sir. I've been collecting invoices.
Thank you.
Mr. Angel?
First of all, I want to point out to Mr. Knesset that some bus drivers are paying much more than that, much more than $5,000. But in deference to the taxpayer, the ones that I know that are paying a lot more, they have buses that are older than 15 years old. So if a bus is older than 15 years old, something happens. The premium goes sky high. But I spoke with several of the bus drivers in our area, and they were concerned that it was going to be reduced. But this is what we paid them last year, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So this motion would pay them the same this year as we did last year.
We would pay them $5,000, yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Angel. Do we have any other board member comment? Mr. Broussard?
Just out of curiosity, not for you, but for Mr. Watson. Strolling through the personnel change, had a number of bus drivers who either retired or resigned or whatever the case may be. Are we replacing owners, the owners that's leaving with owners coming in, or are we just letting it die out and build all aboard on bus drivers?
We hadn't lately here replaced contract drivers with other contract drivers.
You have?
No, we hadn't.
You have. So we're going to let the numbers dwindle until there's none left, or what's our intention? Is to keep a certain amount of contract drivers, or we don't have a?
No, I think that requires further discussion.
No.
I'll give you my opinion on the answer to that question. It's a combination of factors that prevents us from replacing contract drivers with contract drivers, and most of it has to do with insurance costs. The level of pay, the cost of insurance, and it's no matter who carries the liability coverage, like it just goes up every year. And there's not much that we can do as long as we live in the state we live in as far as bus insurance costs.
So you're saying it's to our financial benefit to have no contract drivers?
No, it is clearly not to our financial benefit to have no contract drivers. It is clearly to our financial benefit to have other people carrying the insurance. It's just that it is less and less profitable, my understanding anyway, less and less profitable for the contract bus drivers to make a living in this profession. And so it's hard for me to blame anyone for not wanting to do that job when it's very difficult to turn a profit. Mr. Knesset.
My final comment was that hopefully we all appreciate that if we can get a insurance policy that reduces our self-insured retention from $1 million back to $500,000 or even lower, then we wouldn't have to require this coverage gap with the contract drivers. And it is our goal to not have to lower that self-insured retention if we can get a policy that's affordable to cover that. But until we do, we have to have coverage for that gap.
Mr. Ojel.
I think, Mr. President, and if the bus drivers out there, I saw some heads nodding. I think the problem is that there are maybe 2 companies that write insurance for contract bus drivers. And one of them, like the individual I'm referring to, one of them, if it's over 15 years old, I think his premium is $9,000 a year. And it's almost prohibitive to drive a bus, you know, with a $9,000 insurance premium. And I think there's only one other one that writes it. And so, you know, when there's only 2 mousetraps in the whole area, the mousetraps get expensive.
You're absolutely right. Thank you for that. Is there any other board member comment? Madam Secretary, I'll call for the vote. You should have said, and a lot of mice. They're not very expensive if there's no mice.
Seven for, 1 against, 1 abstain.
Motion carries. The next item is number 29, action concerning RFPs for health and property and casualty insurance. Mr. Hidalgo.
Mr. President, I move that we defer action on this item.
Second.
Motion for Mr. Hidalgo that we defer action on the RFPs for health and property and casualty insurance, seconded by Mr. Knezik. Do we have any public comment on this item? Do we have any board member comment? Mr. Hidalgo?
If I could, with your permission, I'd like a brief moment of personal privilege.
To speak on something other than this motion?
No.
Well, you're certainly the floor to speak on this motion.
Okay, remember you said that.
That's the appropriate time to speak on this motion.
Okay. I just wanted to make a couple of things known that I don't think are put into perspective quite often enough for the public and for the employees and retirees of the school system. Our health insurance plan in total is a $54 million plan, and 66% of that plan, or about 66% of that plan, is paid for by taxpayers. That's $35 million a year. That's every year. And what we have in the case of our health insurance is we have Blue Cross. And I enjoy, by the way, for the record, Blue Cross through my employer. I enjoy that network of hospitals and physicians here locally. What we have here is we have typically a 3-year guaranteed rate by Blue Cross, and then every 3 years, what you would expect to happens. They come back with new rates. And I'm not sure that we've ever experienced lower rates. If we have, I'd love to know about it. My intent here at the time of putting this on the agenda, which certainly got confused, my intent was to keep our current vendor honest. I think that if I'm doing business with you and you never shop me, I'm going to continue to go up on my rates, and I'm going to do it as long as you allow me to. Again, I'd like to reiterate, this is a big deal. It's a $54 million conversation, $35 million of which is paid for directly by the taxpayers. I think our employees, retirees, and all involved deserve nothing but the best, and I just think that we have to stay on top of it so that we're not doing it at any cost, just any cost. The last point I'd like to make is we have a very competent, hardworking consultant in Lynn Fontaine, and I'm glad to see he's here tonight. And Lynn, what I'm asking to do, Lynn does. Lynn does on a semi-regular basis. I just would like to see us be proactive, the school system be proactive in making sure that it's in our policy so that if and when Lynn is no longer available to us as a consultant, that we are making sure we're bidding this stuff out every time it comes up for renewal. And finally, our renewal on our existing agreement would not be until January 2021. With that said, I hope that we all can agree to defer action on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Hidalgo. Do we have any other board member comment? I have a question about your deferral motion. Are we deferring to a specific date, or are we deferring to next month?
No, sir. I would not like to put any specific date on it. I would like to consult a little bit further with our consultant, Lynn Fontaine, before any other action, if any, would arise.
Okay. I'm concerned. I'll tell you my concern and why I asked that question. I know there are some people here tonight that are concerned about this item. I know Mr. Fontaine is here tonight because of this item. I just wanted to know if they'll need to come back next month, or if they'll need to come back in September or October or whenever. Just that was why I asked the question.
No.
Clearly the answer is no.
No, thank you. I have no intent at this time to put this back on the agenda next month. I have no intent. However, if I do request it be put on the agenda and you gracefully honor that request as a fellow school board member, they'll have plenty enough advance notice because it'll be put out as all agenda items are put out.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other board member comment on this motion? Madam Secretary, I'll call for the vote.
Seven for, one against.
Motion to defer carries. The last item on our agenda is number 30, action concerning administration of voluntary benefits. Dr. Shassel.
I had a couple questions.
I'll need to get a motion from someone before Dr. Shassel asks his questions.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion from Mr. Broussard, seconded by Mr. Angel, that the board accept the evaluation committee's recommendation and award the contract for third-party administration of voluntary benefits to educational benefits. Do we have any public comment on this motion? Do we have any board member comment? Dr. Shassel.
Yes, sir. So my first question is, when it comes to the evaluation committee, it says that there were 3 evaluators on the committee. Who were the 3 evaluators?
Ms. Bernard, would you come to the microphone, please? I know Mr. Angel was one of them, as the representative from the board insurance committee. I do not know who the other 2 were.
Ms. Carol Broussard, who was representing the Employee Insurance Advisory Committee, served, and I served as staff.
So Carol Broussard, Mona Bernard, and who was the third? Thank you, sir. All right. Sometimes we can see the criteria, but I couldn't see it on this particular summary. What were the criteria points?
The RFP was very detailed and as objective as I've ever seen one actually put together. So it is appended to the insurance committee meeting of July 8th, I think it was, when we met, and the joint committees. We didn't put the whole RFP back on this item.
So I can find the detailed points on July 8th?
Yes, sir.
All right.
The joint meetings of the committees, joint meeting of the committees.
All right. Is the individual scoring of each committee member on the July 8th detailed joint meetings?
No, we didn't share the individual scoring. We can.
Okay. Can I request that?
Sure.
Dr. Shassel, I have some information on that, if you'd like me to.
Okay, go ahead, you go ahead.
So, this RFP went through a couple different revisions of the Employee Insurance Committee, and then this board approved it prior to sending it out. We had 3 respondents as listed there: Educational Benefits, Dwight Andrus, and Taylor and Sons. The staff convened a evaluation committee. Now, the RFP had about, and I could be speaking out of turn, I think it was 112 points maybe awarded, around that, on the order of 100 and something points in about 20 something categories. And again, orders of magnitude, I don't have the numbers exact. Of the 3 evaluators, you had Employee Insurance Committee, Board Insurance Committee, and member of staff as they listed. All 3 evaluators listed educational benefits number 1. 2 evaluators listed the same company in second place, and then an additional evaluator listed a different company in second place. But it was unanimous amongst the 3 different evaluators that educational benefits scored highest on their RFP scoring rubric. And then if you can look, the total of all 3 evaluators combined scores, they also scored highest with 328 points. The insurance committee also, when we met, had presentations from all 3 vendors. And the recommendation at the end of the insurance committee meeting was to go with the evaluation committee's recommendation for educational benefits.
So let me jump ahead a bit. So a complaint was brought to me that expressed some concern when it comes to not necessarily that there was cheating going on, or not necessarily that something underhanded was going on, but just the fact that it could be viewed or skewed in that light toward a particular company getting the individual recommendation. And some of the issues that were brought up were, let's see, number 1, that EBI had some serious input into the actual writing of the RFP. So, Ms. Bernard, could you let me know if EBI had input in the writing of the actual RFP that they were eventually going to bid on?
Not directly with me, but I think that there were some changes made to the RFP at their request.
Dr. Chasson, if I may, everybody did. Everybody had an opportunity to edit the RFP because the RFP was put on a public meeting.
Right.
We
it's
convened,
a typical process.
and they were here. I believe we had comments from, I'd have to go back and look, but the only comments we received at that meeting were from the Employee Insurance Committee, Ms. Mounts, I think specifically, and then we had comments from EBI. I don't recall if any of the other vendors attended that meeting or made any comments or revisions to the RFP at that time. But it is true that EBI, along with everybody in the world, had an opportunity to edit.
I mean,
edit it.
It's your job and role to, if there's a meeting, attend the meeting, and if you'd like to see something included, not included, whatnot.
Right.
I understand that.
And we did make some revisions that we obviously voted on and thought were good ideas at the time.
Okay. A second point that was requested or discussed with me was statements made at one of the meetings that we wanted to help an individual company recoup their investments. And they stated that Ms. Bernard had made the statement that she wanted to help them recoup their investment at the advisory committee meeting. And I wanted to get clarification on that, because for me to vote on something, I need to have a firm understanding that there was nothing foul of play, nothing foul of foot. So, Ms. Bernard, do you recall any such, and I'm not asking you a rhetorical question, I'm not trying to be sarcastic. I tried to go and look, but I mean, the meetings are an hour and a half, 2 hours. I zipped through, I tried to listen to as many times as you spoke when I could see you on film. I didn't see anything. Do you recall mentioning anything as far as wanting to help them recoup their investment?
I would say that the discussion went along the lines of a company comes in and they devote a lot of resources into transitioning to an organization. And so I wouldn't say I wanted them to make money off of us. That's not what the sentiment, but the idea that you usually don't go out for RFP again the next year and not give them an opportunity to prove themselves that they can do it. It's just something that came up. I don't even know who brought it up, but we did talk about that it's not, if we get to be known as an organization that goes out to the market every single year and they don't know, a company doesn't know they'll have any continuity, we will not have any more interest in having people come to do business with us. So it's good practice to stick with somebody a couple of years for some continuity. I think that's the point that was trying to be made.
My next question. It was brought to my attention that on, I'm assuming July 11th, because that's when the letter was written, or it has the date of July 11th, that there was a letter written to the Vermilion Parish School Board on behalf of Educational Benefits, EBI, giving them a recommendation from us. And it was written by you, Ms. Bernard. Are you aware of that?
Oh, yes, sir. I mean, I wrote it, so yes, sir, I'm aware of it.
Okay. So, I don't know if I want to tell you my issue with it or if I want to discuss it first. So I guess let me discuss it first. So, in the letter dated July 11th, there's a letter written to the Vermilion Parish School Board that it's a letter of recommendation for EBI, Educational Benefits, and it's written on your behalf. Excuse me, it's written, I'm assuming it was written by you. It was written by you, Ms. Bernard?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it's a recommendation letter for EBI, informing Vermilion Parish about a number of things, such as there were no hiccups whatsoever in the implementation. EBI exceeded our expectations. A survey was conducted with every employee, and there was an employee satisfaction rate of 99.5%. EBI has provided products to our employees that are superior to our prior benefits package. They provide superior customer service. EBI has worked closely with you. They have helped examine our internal processes to see where we might become more efficient. And in your opinion, they are experts, and you're very pleased with their services. So, when I first got this letter sent to me, I read it, didn't really understand why it was being written. Then I read it again. And then I read it a third time. And in reading it a third time, the way it's explained in such superlatives and definitives really bothered me when I read it. Now, for anybody who's maybe just doesn't understand, the adjective form of superlative is of the highest quality or degree. So to speak so definitively that there were no hiccups whatsoever and they exceeded our expectations, there's a lot of our and superior customer service and better than the previous people. And I just want to know who approved this letter to get sent to Vermilion Parish on our behalf.
Mr. Chasson, we write letters like this frequently, and I think in all areas of our organization where goods and services are provided, a lot of times we're asked by the companies we do business with, and sometimes by those we no longer do business with, what our experience was, so they can include those recommendations in their proposals to other districts. It is a common occurrence.
Do we
And
do we frequently write letters of recommendation on behalf of companies who are currently bidding for products on which you served on the scoring committee
Yes,
and
sir.
are running the RFP process before that that bid has been awarded? Do we frequently do that?
We're already engaged in a contract with them, so I'm not speaking for the future. I'm speaking about our experience. We wanted to share our enrollment experience. That's all it was, and we had no problems, and they did exceed our expectations.
Whose expectations?
Whose expectations, Ms. Bernard?
Those of us on staff who have to manage the process with the vendor.
But, Ms. Bernard, my question is, when you say our expectations, our includes me. I was not aware that this letter was written on our behalf until somebody from Vermilion sent it to me. So it's a problem for me. Now, if someone tells me that this is a common occurrence, we probably need to look at these occurrences. How often have letters been written for what Mr. Centani described as someone that is currently bidding and you're actually on the committee scoring them, that to in turn write a recommendation letter to another parish so that company can get more business? How often does that occur? Please say it doesn't occur quite often.
Well, I wouldn't couch it the way you're saying it. We were talking about our expectations of transitioning to, we are their client. We currently do business with them. So I don't know, to answer your question.
If you're Taylor and Sons, who was one of the bidders on our package right here, they did not get recommended. Do you feel like you were given a fair shake when you see that the person in charge of the RFP process is recommending one of the other bidders to a third party who is also seeking the same services? Do you see where the problem is here?
No, sir, I really don't.
You do not?
No, because the process was over as far as we were concerned.
Has
you
the
might
bid been
turn
awarded?
it down tonight. I'm not saying that. I'm not talking about what's going to happen in the future. I was talking about how they asked about our experience in the past. I'm kind of baffled, really.
I wouldn't have known that this letter existed were it not sent to me and then also not posted as the only recommendation letter on behalf of this company on Vermilion Parish School Board's website. So then to pull up their actual agenda and to click it and see results, a recommendation letter. From who? From you. From me? Kind of floored me. It's on company letterhead. It's on company letterhead. So to send this recommendation, this doesn't need to be approved. Ms. Bernard, who's your direct supervisor?
Mr. Guidry?
Was Mr. Guidry aware that you wrote this letter?
No.
Okay. Was Mr. Guidry, who's Mr. Guidry's direct supervisor?
I think it's Ms. Trosclair.
Ms. Trosclair, were you aware that Mr. Guidry did not approve, and as well Ms. Bernard wrote this letter? Okay. One of the paragraphs states that this particular company works closely with me, being you, and my staff. And they help us explore future benefits offerings, and they help examine our internal processes to see where we might become more efficient. If I were a company bidding against this particular company, I would say there's no chance in hell I have to get this individual contract, because if they're able to go into the offices, not into the offices, and help examine internal processes to see where we might become more efficient. I didn't know we had hired a company to work with us internally. I thought that was our job to determine what's best for us, let alone a company that is making money off of us to then turn around and help us audit internally what's going on and what's taking place. Now, I'm sure, as you can tell at this point, that I'm a little slanted in my view of this individual letter, as you stated, it baffles me. It baffled me when I read it. It's a recommendation letter for another company that is trying to get business with us, that you served on the actual committee that will eventually give them the recommendation or the individual scoring. That's my request for wanting to see the request for the committee scoring. Not to say Carol or Mr. Angel were skewed in their view, but they didn't write the letter.
The letter was written after the process of scoring was over.
When was the letter written?
The date on the letter.
Okay. When was the scoring finished?
In June, we met the last week of June, I believe. I'd have to look at my calendar.
And how long have you worked with this company?
Since October of last year.
In my humble opinion, this process could be viewed as skewed, unfair to other companies based upon letters like this coming to light. We should not be writing recommendation letters for someone that is still trying to get business with us. And if I was one of them companies, excuse my language, if I were one of those companies, that's English ACT prep, I'm sorry, I would have some serious issues with what has taken place. And I'll stop with that.
Thank you, Dr. Chassel. Mr. Angel?
Thank you. Mona, it's obviously a certain amount of collusion here. You know, the president jumped in when Dr. Chassel had the board and no one objected. And I think he feels the same way. But first of all, I want to commend you for being professional, and I want to point out that you were right. The scoring, I want to say it was maybe late June or the first week in July, but when the scoring was done. And you simply reported on your prior experience for 1 year with this company. Now, we the three of us, you and I, and the lady, she's from the retirement. Yeah, Miss Broussard. Oh yeah, there she is. We all scored this company first, all of us. And then we had a joint committee meeting we had two committee meetings jointly. The school board committee meeting and the insurance committee meeting, employee insurance committee meeting. There were two motions at that meeting. The school board committee meeting, the motion was for the insurance company that got the most points, and it was unanimous. And then the employee insurance committee was in session. They had advertised that their meeting was at the same time and in conjunction with the school board meeting. They voted for that same company that had the most points and was graded the highest. And I knew from the get-go that there was a move afoot against this company. Why, I don't know. But there was a move afoot against it. Obviously still is. I just hope that the rest of my fellow board members will listen well and look at the recommendations. I don't know how many questions there were for there must have been 40 or 50 questions about relative to the bid process. And I use the term bid loosely because this is a professional service and it's not necessarily bid. It's a perfect example would be the Blue Cross Blue Shield. We don't bid that out. We ask for proposals, and we haven't bid it out for 2 or 3 years. I don't know how long it's been, But you have a very similar situation right here. The Blue Cross Blue Shield company, of which I do not participate, by the way, is absolutely preferred by our employees. They like it. The insurance company, if that's what it's called, the one that received the highest number of points, they also, Dr. Chasson pointed out, had a 95 or 99% approval rating. And yet we bid them out 1 year after we accepted the bid. It's you know what they say, if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck and walks like a duck, it must be a duck. We let one, because our employees are happy, continue serving us, and then we have one who, most of our employees are happy, all but less than 1%, and we bid it again in 1 year, which is as a former insurance agent who owned an independent insurance agency, I can tell this board and the people here, it's very time consuming and it's very expensive to put out a proposal. And you don't normally do it every year. You usually give the company a couple of years like we do other companies, except that one. We bid it out again after 1 year. And it put a lot of work on all of the three that bid. All of the three. I think the three that bid had bid the year before. So, but it's still a lot of work. And I just want to impress upon this board that we went by the numbers, we went by the book, we had an insurance committee, employee committee meeting, we had a board committee meeting, we all scored this company first. It was on the up and up, absolute up and up, and I defy anyone to cast aspersions upon my scoring. And I think that the other people who scored, including you, feel the same way. And I urge this board to go along with the recommendation of not only the school board insurance committee, but the employee insurance committee, both of whom recommended this company. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Angel. Ms. Morrison?
I just wanted to confirm, you said someone from Vermilion Parish asked you to write a letter or not a recommendation, but ask you for your experience with this company, and that's why you wrote the letter?
No, Ms. Morris.
How did that happen?
Someone from EBI asked me to write it so they could put it in their portfolio.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hidalgo?
Ms. Bernard, whenever the proposals were scored by the three committee members, were the company names redacted, or could the folks scoring see the company name on the packet?
We knew who the company was, not
Okay.
redacted.
You know, I've heard the word baffled come out of two people's mouth tonight. I don't think anybody in this room is more baffled than me at this conversation. I really don't. And Ms. Bernard, I'll tell you that had this letter come out prior to the scoring, I think we'd be having some pretty serious issues. But I think that whether or not we send out recommendations from this school system for any product or service is a valid conversation, and it should be had. I don't think it should be had on this agenda item only because the information was put out after the scoring. But yeah, I think if we're sending out recommendations, we might ought to have some kind of hierarchy of approval. And the last thing I want to point out is, Dr. Chasson, it's not to cause any further debate, but I think the we in that letter, and I don't have it, but I heard you say something along the lines, I'll paraphrase, of we have had a great experience with the company. They have exceeded our expectations. There were surveys, and that's been reported on several times. And yeah, in the high 90s, the employees scored this particular organization to be professional and above board. So I think we is the employees, but I do see how you say we can be you and me because it's on letterhead. But I have no doubt that we do this countless times in every department where we write letters of recommendation. I mean, whenever these bids come in, Were there any letters of recommendation inside of the RFP package that were submitted by the three companies?
It's very likely. I can't recall specifically. Maybe Mr. Angel does, but that's a common thing to ask
And
to
that's the
include in
point.
into their proposals.
Yes, ma'am. And that's the point I'm making, is that it's probably standard practice that needs to be revisited on how we execute it. But I too want to thank you for your professionalism throughout the process.
Thank you.
Mr. Knezik.
One of the comments I made during the board insurance committee was that, you know, these processes are not perfect. These proposal processes are not perfect, but it's as perfect as we could make it as a governing body at the time. We did put this RFP out for public comment. We did have comments from the public vendors, employee insurance committee, and I know that it's probably, you know, it didn't go the way somebody wanted it or other people wanted it, but I do have confidence that, especially because the three independent evaluators each voted the recommended company first, that I have confidence at least with the scoring. And I can tell you that I, as the former president, was most critical and gave educational benefits a very hard time with signing their contract last year. I would only agree to a one-year contract. So I was, if anyone in this room is most critical of them, it was me. And I'm confident, and I will vote with good conscience to vote for them in favor of this. That being said, regarding the letter, at least my experience with my company and with when I was in the Navy, very few people have the authority to speak on behalf of this organization. This board, I cannot write a letter that speaks on behalf of this board. The only person that we voted this year to speak on behalf of this board is Mr. Santani. In addition to that, the only person that in this room that has the authority to speak on behalf of the school system is Ms. Trosclair. Now, Mr. Santani could give us in a memo a bi-direction authority saying, you know, by direction you have authority to speak on behalf of this, or Ms. Trosclair could give her direct reports bi-direction authority to speak on behalf of the system, but she would do that knowing that if one of her reports sent out a letter, that she would be accountable to their comments, and she would be the one held accountable for their comments. So I think that regarding the letter, regarding any future letters that come from the board representing the school system as the board or the school system as an entity, I think we should tighten that up and maybe put a policy out there with how those letters should be handled and who has the actual authority to speak on behalf of either the board or the school system. Thank you.
Mr. Latchley.
I'll be quick and brief, which is not the norm for me. I actually serve on the school board insurance committee, and I do apologize. I was absent due to work. The information I received from the meeting, Ms. Bernard got in touch with me personally and was aware that I couldn't make the meeting and was there for any information I needed. I can safely say that if I would have been here, instead of being 2-0, it would have been 3-0. And I too voted against this very company probably less than a year ago. So the information was made available to me. I am up to date. I do again apologize for not being there because that is one of my duties, but my day job came first, unfortunately. But I would have supported them that night, and I will go ahead and support them tonight, and I will vote with a clear conscience. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Latchley. Do we have any other board member comment? None. We're gonna move on. I'm gonna say something, then we're gonna vote. Okay. Go ahead. I'll give you 30 seconds.
All right. If nobody can see fit to see why there's an issue as to why someone who sits on the committee helps with the recommendation and does the scoring of an individual company, writes a letter on behalf of another company to send to another parish. I mean, I don't want to say we're being blind or somebody needs to wake up, but there's an issue with this. There's a huge issue with this. We shouldn't be sending recommendation letters to other parishes where the same companies are vying for our business. and they're at a disadvantage in another location. And last but not least, I don't know where me and one of these individual board members have gotten off skew of late, but I take extreme issue to the term collusion, and I have to say something. You see, for collusion being like a secret cooperation or like a deceitful agreement to deceive others, for me to hear the gentleman begin to speak, if I disagreed with him, I would have said point of order or point of parliamentary inquiry to stop him from speaking. But since I agreed with him, I didn't say anything. So I take extreme issue with the term collusion.
Thank you, Dr. Chasson. I'll say something finally before we can vote and get out of here. Mr. Angel, I also take a bit of exception to the term collusion. I apologize for my outburst. I was unable to control myself when Ms. Bernard said she is frankly baffled at why we would take exception to a letter being written in this time frame. I don't think anybody here is saying we shouldn't write letters of recommendation. I believe it's a great help to us. Certainly teachers come to us with letters of recommendation. Certainly other employees come with letters of recommendation. It's a great help to us from people we know around the state giving us recommendations on services we may or may not wish to purchase. I don't think anybody's saying we shouldn't write letters of recommendation. I think my issue, me personally, I'm clearly in the minority, is that this letter of recommendation was written by the risk manager who is managing an RFP process in favor of a company who is currently competing for our business. Certainly it is not too much to ask for 2 months out of the year to not write letters of recommendation. Because while Ms. Bernard and everyone else has pointed out that the letter was written after the scoring was done, I presume her very strong and favorable opinions were not formed in the 6 days after the scoring was done, and that she previously held these opinions prior to scoring. And I say this not to impeach anyone's credibility. I feel sorry that I may have led you down that road, or that Dr. Chasson may have led you down that road. I am not impeaching anyone's credibility. This looks terrible. Were there, Ms. Bernard, are you still in here? Were there any other bidders in Vermilion Parish? We don't know who they were, though. Do we know who the incumbent provider was in Vermilion Parish? We don't know. Okay. How would you feel if you were one of the companies who was bidding on this and you were scored and then found out that one of the committee members, the risk manager who was in charge of answering any questions you had about the RFP or being available to help you submit it, was writing letters of recommendation for other parishes in the middle of the process? I think for sure, at the very least, you would feel that there was probably just some difficulty in being impartial. You know, maybe you're willing to accept that she was impartial. No, we're done with public comment. We're gonna vote after I'm done. This is my problem with this letter. It's not anything to do with educational benefits. It's not anything to do with Dwight Andrus. It's not anything to do with Taylor and Sons. It's this right here, this letter that Dr. Chasson brought up. To have that come out during what is supposed to be a severely impartial bid process, which, by the way, this was not bid last year. That was the problem last year. This was not bid. This company was just selected. And so this is actually the first bid for this piece of business. So with that said, Madam Secretary, I will call for the vote and we will leave the meeting.
So, Mr. President, you're not going to give me equal time that you gave to your partner over there?
Would you like 30 seconds?
Yes, I'd like 30 seconds.
Please take 30 seconds.
I'd like to offer to buy everyone on this board a Coke or an adult beverage after the meeting.
I accept.
My disagreement is not with you all individually. My disagreement is the agenda item.
I understand.
Just 2 seconds. 2 seconds. I just want to piggyback on Mr. Knezik that we, when we write letters that's going out on behalf of LPSS, that it, goes through the proper chain of commands and put something in place. Because just like this happened, it could happen in other departments. So I think it's really important that we follow some type of chain of command. Thanks.
6 for, 1 against, 1 abstain.
That being the last item of our meeting is adjourned.